Surprise guest. In It Follows, the horror works in a simple and cruel way. The entity will always walk toward you, and only you can see it. At this point in the movie, Jay is already completely paranoid, and for good reason. She runs upstairs, goes into the bedroom, and tries to protect herself. And here the movie does something really smart. It plays with your expectations. First, Jay opens the door thinking it's the thing, but it's just her friends. Relief. Then the door opens again. Another friend walks in, but then right after that, from the back of the hallway, a figure appears. It's an absurdly tall, thin man with an empty face. He's so tall that he has to bend down to get through the doorway. And the weirdest part, nobody reacts because nobody sees him. Only Jay does. And that's when the real panic kicks in. She freezes for a second and then just jumps out the window. She doesn't even try to explain. She doesn't even try to warn the others. The tall man was played by Mike Lanier, who was over 7 feet 7 inches tall, the clown doll. Poltergeist takes something totally ordinary, a child's toy, and turns it into nightmare fuel. The story follows the Freeling family who start experiencing strange phenomena inside their house, all connected to a supernatural presence that keeps getting more and more aggressive. And in the middle of all that, there's Robbie, a boy who already feels very uncomfortable about the clown doll sitting in his room. The scene starts simply. Robbie is alone in his room trying to sleep, but he's clearly uneasy. He looks at the doll, and right away you get that feeling that something is about to go wrong. One moment, the clown is sitting in the chair. The next, it's just gone. And that's when the panic starts. Silence takes over, Robbie tries to find the doll, and you already know this is not going to end well. Suddenly, the toy shows up in the worst possible place and comes to life, attacking the boy in a completely unexpected way. It doesn't even need to show much. The tension built before that already does all the work. What makes this scene so rewatchable is exactly the setup. It's not just the attack, it's the atmosphere before it. And let's be honest, after that, a lot of people started looking differently at any doll, especially if it was a clown. The Wire. Ghost Ship is the kind of movie a lot of people barely even remember the plot of, but this scene right here, impossible to forget. The opening throws us straight onto a luxury ship in the 1960s, with well-dressed passengers, music playing, and everyone dancing peacefully. It almost feels like a completely different kind of movie. But the mood changes in seconds. While everyone is distracted, a steel wire gets triggered and cuts across the entire ballroom at insane speed. No warning, no long build-up, it just happens all at once. And the most shocking part isn't even the moment itself, but the silence that comes after. For a few seconds, nobody understands what just happened. Then the severed heads and bodies start falling, leaving only one survivor on the ship. A lot of people consider this opening one of the best horror movie openings ever made. It's the kind of scene that outshines the movie itself, and maybe that's exactly why people still go back and watch it to this day. The Monsters Let Loose. The Cabin in the Woods starts out like a cliché cabin in the woods horror movie, but it quickly shows that there's something much bigger going on behind it all. The story follows a group of young people who go spend time at a cabin in the middle of nowhere, without knowing they're being manipulated by a secret organization controlling everything behind the scenes. Yes, everything, even the monsters. And that's where this insane scene comes in. Inside this underground facility, there are all kinds of creatures being kept locked up, each one representing a classic type of horror. For a while, everything seems under control, until someone makes a mistake, and when the system fails, every single creature gets released at the same time. The result? Total chaos. Monsters of every kind invade the place all at once. It's not just one isolated threat, it's a complete collapse. The scene almost turns into a horror crossover, with clear references to all kinds of different creatures and styles. There are things in there you recognize instantly, and others that go by so fast you only catch them on a rewatch. And that's exactly why this scene became such a must-rewatch moment. You can't take it all in the first time. Every time you watch it, you catch a new detail, a hidden reference, a different creature. It's basically a gift for horror fans. The creators packed this sequence with Easter eggs specifically to make people want to rewatch it, and it works. The corpse. In Saw, the ending doesn't slow down, and it slams on the gas and goes straight into chaos. We go back to the bathroom where everything started, with Adam and Dr. Gordon at their limit. Time is up, panic kicks in, and Gordon makes an insane decision. He cuts off his own foot to free himself from the chain. It's the kind of moment that happens so fast you barely even process it. Right after that, Zepp comes in, who until then seemed like the main villain behind everything. But the movie still has one more card to play. In desperation, Adam manages to fight back and kills him right there. But when he searches the body, surprise, Zepp was just another piece in the game too. Just one more victim being manipulated. And then comes the real blow. The corpse in the middle of the room, the one no one was paying attention to anymore and that had been there the whole movie, suddenly starts moving. Gets up. It's Jigsaw himself. The guy spent the entire movie lying there, listening to everything, watching every choice like some privileged spectator. And it doesn't stop there. He drops one more bomb. The key that would have freed Adam had been in the bathtub from the very beginning and went down the drain in the first few minutes of the movie. In other words, Adam's fate was pretty much sealed from the start. Jigsaw then calmly walks out, turns off the light, and says the line that would go down in history.
Game over.
The wrong face. The Others has one of the most remembered plot twists in cinema. But before that, there's this unforgettable scene. In the story, we follow Grace, an extremely religious mother who lives with her 2 children in an isolated mansion, believing that something strange is happening inside. Her daughter Anne insists that she sees people in the house, including an unknown old woman. Grace doesn't believe her until this scene. It all starts when she enters a room and sees a figure sitting on the floor, wearing her daughter's white communion dress, facing away, quietly playing. It seems normal, but something feels off. As Grace gets closer, the weirdness grows. The figure there isn't that of a little girl. It's something aged, like an old woman. Even so, the figure keeps acting as if it were Anne. That contrast alone creates an absurd amount of discomfort. And then comes the moment that sticks with you. Grace looks through the veil, and what she sees is not her daughter's face. It's the face of an old blind woman with white eyes and a completely empty expression. It's quick, but enough to shatter any feeling of safety. The reaction is immediate. Grace panics and lunges at her, but in an instant, everything changes. The figure goes back to normal, and the one sitting there really is her daughter, terrified and not understanding what's happening. This is the kind of scene that messes with your head. You don't know whether it was real or whether Grace is losing control. The whole sequence relies on practical effects and acting, without depending on heavy CGI, which makes everything feel even more convincing. The monster in the storm drain. The movie, It, starts in a way that doesn't even give you time to breathe. The scene takes place in the town of Derry on a rainy day. Bill Denbrough is sick at home, and to entertain his little brother Georgie, he makes him a paper boat and even seals it with wax to make sure it won't sink. It's a simple detail, but it makes everything feel more real. Georgie runs down the street, totally excited, following the paper boat through the rainwater. It feels light, innocent, until the moment the boat falls straight into a storm drain. And that's when the problem starts. When he gets close to grab the boat, he sees 2 glowing eyes in the darkness. Then Pennywise, the clown, appears with that overly friendly way of talking that makes him impossible to trust. He talks to Georgie, jokes around, tries to make everything feel comfortable, but always with that strange tone that gives away that something is very wrong. The scariest part is exactly how sudden the change is. The moment Georgie reaches out to grab the boat, Pennywise changes completely. The threat shows up with no warning, and what happens next is fast, shocking, and impossible to ignore. The scene doesn't just hit hard, it defines the tone of the entire movie. A lot of people go back to this sequence to analyze that exact transition, from something innocent to something disturbing in seconds, proving that sometimes the first few minutes are enough to traumatize an entire generation. Silent Hallway. The Exorcist 3 is the kind of movie that doesn't rely on scares all the time, but when it decides to use one, it does it right. The story follows an investigation involving murders connected to something that seems impossible, creating a constant feeling of tension. And in the middle of that, we get one of the most famous horror scenes ever, even though it looks simple on the surface. It all happens inside a hospital at night, a place that should feel safe, but here it feels way too empty. A nurse goes through her normal routine, walking down the hallways and checking the room doors. The camera stays far away with no quick cuts, which makes everything feel more real and more uncomfortable, and that's where the detail that makes this scene work comes in. Nothing happens for a good while. It's just routine, silence, and that feeling that something could show up at any second. But the movie doesn't pay it off when you expect it to. It waits a little longer, and right when you're starting to relax, it happens. Director William Peter Blatty built this scene with long takes specifically to break the audience's expectations, creating one of the most respected jump scares in the genre. It's the kind of scare that proves timing is everything. The meat hook. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre follows a group of young people who end up crossing paths with a deeply disturbing family, and in the middle of that nightmare, one of the most talked about scenes in the genre shows up. Everything revolves around Pam, who walks into a house that looks abandoned without having any idea what's about to happen. And this is where the real horror starts, before any attack even happens. The room she finds isn't just dirty. It's an entire space decorated with human bones, furniture made from body parts, and skulls stacked up like decorations. She freezes trying to process what she's seeing, and that's exactly when Leatherface appears. No buildup, no stalling. He takes control of the situation and drags Pam deeper into the house. What comes next is direct and brutal. Pam is thrown onto a meat hook, a scene the camera doesn't soften. Tobe Hooper doesn't look away, and Terry McMinn's scream in that moment is often mentioned as one of the most disturbing sounds ever captured in a horror movie. Oh, and it's worth remembering that this is the same movie that ends with Leatherface alone on a road, swinging the chainsaw through the air while the sun rises. One of the most iconic images in horror, in an ending that solves absolutely nothing. And that's exactly why it's perfect. Face in the Shadow. Insidious has one of the most unforgettable jump scares in horror. The story revolves around the Lambert family, who begin facing supernatural events after little Dalton falls into an unexplained state. In this specific scene, everything feels calm, maybe too calm. Lorraine, the grandmother, is sitting at the table describing a disturbing dream she had. She talks about walking into her grandson's room and seeing a figure standing in the corner, watching. As she speaks, the camera cuts to Josh, the father, listening closely. No loud music, no exaggerated setup. It's just a conversation, and then the scare hits. Lorraine reacts instantly, screaming, and the entity disappears as fast as it showed up. This is the kind of scene that gets even people who already know the scare is coming. The demon was played by the film's own composer, Joseph Bishara, and yeah, a lot of people compare the look to Darth Maul, but here the effect is a lot more terrifying. The deadly phone call. In Scream, we follow Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore, home alone, doing something completely ordinary. Popcorn on the stove, movie about to start, and then the phone rings. At first, it just seems like a wrong number, some guy making conversation, and there's even a little playful flirting about horror movies. But the conversation starts getting weird way too fast. He begins knowing things he shouldn't until he finally says he knows who she is, and that he's watching the house. From that point on, there's no playful mood left. The backyard lights come on and reveal her boyfriend tied up outside, completely helpless. The guy on the phone, now clearly Ghostface, proposes a game. Answer horror trivia questions to save her boyfriend. She plays along, gets the first one right without any problem. But then comes the classic trick question. Who is the killer in Friday the 13th? She confidently says Jason, but she's wrong, and Ghostface doesn't forgive mistakes. With no warning, no drawn-out suspense, her boyfriend is killed right there in front of her, and that's the moment everything turns into real panic. There's no game anymore. Casey panics, tries to run, hide, buy herself any extra second she can, but the killer is already inside the house. The chase is fast, chaotic, and ends in a cruel way. Later, her parents arrive and find the horrifying scene. This moment works so well because it breaks a basic rule. Drew Barrymore was the big name in the movie, and even so, she dies right in the opening. Wes Craven basically tells you right away, nobody here is protected. The mysterious scream. The story of Annihilation follows a group of scientists who enter a mysterious area called the Shimmer, where everything undergoes bizarre mutations. Plants, animals, even reality itself. At this point in the movie, only a few survivors are left, and the situation is already completely out of control. The scene takes place inside an abandoned house. Lena, Josie, and Anya are trapped, tied to chairs, after Anya has a breakdown and decides to restrain the group. The atmosphere is already tense on its own, but it gets worse when they start hearing a sound coming from outside. It sounds like someone crying out for help. And it's not just any voice, it's Cassie's voice, one of the group members who has already died. But that makes no sense. And then it comes in. A bear, but not a normal bear. The creature walks in slowly with part of its face deformed, almost like an exposed skull. You can tell it's been mixed with other things. It comes closer slowly, sniffing each of them, as if it's choosing. And then comes the moment that freezes everyone. A lot of people go back to this scene because of that. It's not just the look, it's the sound. The movie uses that idea to show how the Shimmer doesn't create ordinary monsters, but complete distortions of life, blending everything together in a deeply disturbing way. It's the kind of scene that doesn't depend on a quick scare, but stays in your head afterward. Crawling out of the screen. In The Ring, the curse is simple. Watch the tape and you have 7 days. For the whole movie, that almost feels like a legend, until the moment the deadline really runs out. Noah, the ex-boyfriend of the main character, Rachel Keller, is home alone when the TV turns on by itself, showing that grainy well from the tape. And you can already feel that this isn't just one more strange manifestation. It's the end arriving, and then she appears. Samara Morgan climbs out from the bottom of the well and starts walking toward the camera. There are no screams or jump scares, just that feeling that something impossible is about to happen. And then it does. When she gets close to the screen, she simply comes through the glass and into the room, crawling out of the television while water starts spreading across the floor. Rachel tries to call Noah to warn him and rushes to the house to save him, but there's no time left. At that point, the movie has already broken every rule. There's no more distance, no more protection. He tries to back away, panics, but it doesn't matter because she keeps coming, always at the same speed, always unavoidable. She just keeps appearing closer and close until it's over. The shower. In Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, the shower scene didn't just kill off a character. It basically changed cinema forever. We follow Marion Crane, who up to that point seems like the classic main character because she has the story, the conflict, the screen time. Everything points to her carrying the movie, and then the script blindsides you with no warning. Marion gets to the motel, decides to take a shower, and that's it. It feels like a quiet pause. But out of nowhere, a figure appears behind the curtain, and the craziest part, you see a full attack without really seeing anything. No stab actually goes into the body on screen. It's all quick editing, sharp cuts, sound, and suggestion. Your brain fills in the rest on its own, and that's genius. There were more than 70 cuts in less than a minute. It's almost like a visual assault. Bernard Herrmann's score comes slashing in with those violins that sound like screams, and that was it. Instant, permanent reference point. To this day, pretty much every horror knife scene owes something to this one. And here's a bizarre little fact. The blood going down the drain was actually chocolate syrup, and it worked better than any realistic effect of that time. Another one. Hitchcock killed off the main character in the first third of the movie, something completely unthinkable in 1960. Nobody did that, and that's why this death hits so hard. It's not just because the scene is shocking, it's because right there you realize nobody is safe. If even the main character can be gone like that, out of nowhere, then the movie can do anything to anyone. But then, which horror scene have you rewatched the most? Let us know in the comments. Maybe it'll make it into part 2. On screen is a video where we show horror characters who die at the very last minute. Click and watch. I'll see you there.